It's 6:15. You're listening to the Weekend Morning Show on CBC Radio 1. We are heading up to Dauphin for this morning's early bird. Jason Gilmore is on the phone. Hi, Jason.
Good morning, Nadia.
How is Dauphin this morning?
Well, brisk, as I'm sure it is in Winnipeg, yes. But no wind right now here, so that helps.
Yes, the wind makes all the difference, as Heather was saying. Jason, tell me about the email you sent me this week in response to an episode of Abandoned Manitoba last weekend.
Yeah, where to start? So once again, just super appreciative for this opportunity, and so have followed Gordon Goldsboro and the Manitoba Historical Society and the Abandoned Manitoba segment that you run. And I was pleasantly surprised on Tuesday listening to the audio file that our community was mentioned and an initiative that we're undertaking right now. So at the end of your conversation with Gordon, you had indicated, provide an update. and I don't know if I should get into what we're actually talking about, but that was the motivation to try and contact you and add more substance to the discussion.
And I'm so happy you're able to join us. So for those who missed the episode last weekend, Gordon Goldsboro was talking about the turntable, which I think is the only rail turntable in Manitoba.
Correct.
Existing,
it's
right?
Still existing, correct, yes.
And he was kind of concerned for the future of it, and he kind of did a call out wanting an update from the community about what's happening with that. So tell us what that update.
Yeah, so just to give it a little reference point too, so in Dauphin, a real storied rail history going back 129 years with the arrival of the first train. We're basically the home of Canadian Northern Railway that became Canada's third transcontinental railway. So Dauphin was a very important divisional hub. So in the steam locomotive era, this is the furthest you could go west from Winnipeg before steam locomotives needed maintenance. They were very labor intensive. So Dauphin still has the device called the turntable, which steam locomotives would park on, and that device could turn 360 degrees to then allow steam locomotives to go into the roundhouse, which was a maintenance center for the locomotives. So Dauphin, the turntable and roundhouse date back to 1906, and they both still exist. The building that was the roundhouse is now the City Public Works building, so it is an active work site. We were approached in December by the city indicating that they were wanting to remove the turntable, just with vehicles being a little bit larger now and such. So posed with that problem, we looked for a solution. We had a meeting with the city and indicated that, so that if everybody knows how a turntable works, the track portion is kind of in a 12 and 6 position right now. We said, okay, how about rotate it to a 3 and 9 position, fill in the portion of the pit that's closest to the building, but you still keep the turntable in situ, which maintains its value.
And how did they respond to that suggestion?
So their initial response was, wow, we never thought of that. So it was great that we were open to that discussion. So not only us personally indicating and trying to fight to preserve this piece of history, but Gordon Goldsboro came to mind, given how influential he is with both the Historical Society and how media savvy he is. So at that point, I reached out to the Manitoba Historical Society looking for a letter of support. They were kind enough to provide one. And then I went through all of our networks that we have in both history and rail throughout the country. And at that point, have collected 7 letters of support ranging from BC, Alberta, Ontario, Quebec, all indicating the importance of this structure and the need for it to be preserved. So that has been sent to both mayor and council, and we just haven't heard what the plan is. And truth be told, like right now, sometimes no news is good news, I'm feeling, but given this opportunity and Gordon actually giving it the shout out, I'm like, yeah, I need to reach out and just let people know, how important this is and just the whole story of preserving history.
And why is it so important to you personally, Jason? I should mention you are the president of the Dauphin Rail Museum.
Correct. it's a really interesting discussion, like especially given current day events with National Flag Day of Canada being today. It's an ability to understand and appreciate just our cultural heritage, and having something preserved allows us to connect with the past and learn from our history, and I believe really create a sense of place and community, and you, I'm sure, fully understand that, the community that you built just with this show. So building community right now is really important. I think that preserving heritage history is an element of that.
And when did you get attuned to that need or desire to preserve local history?
Oh, I've always been a fan of history, and that goes into my father always being a student of history. And then the rail component, like having grown up in Manitoba, just how significant rail has been to our history, and having extended family members having worked in rail in the past. And then moving, I never grew up in Dauphin. I lived here for 2 years, graduated high school, moved away for 20 years, but would always come back to visit my parents and such. And how blessed Dauphin is to, first off, have this station that I'm sitting in right now.
Are you there right now?
I am.
I thought you were joking when you said you were going to go there.
No, I'm here. Well, I don't know. To me, it brings just comfort, this place. And I don't know. You need to find those things that bring you joy and passion as well. And I've found it here.
I love that.
I had a 20-year history as a practicing chiropractor in the U.S. So sitting here talking to you about this situation like 10, 15 years ago, if you said this would be the case, I'd say, what are you talking about? So it's really interesting how life throws twists and turns.
Oh my God, I have so many questions about your background, but we'll stick to the Dauphin Rail Museum for now. You have an event happening today as well. Tell us about that.
Yeah, just trying to get on board with showing how proud we should be as Canadians. So realizing it's National Flag Day of Canada, so the 60th anniversary of the unveiling of the Maple Leaf, and given that the building itself is both a provincial heritage building and designated as a National Canadian Historic Railway Station, I said, why not do a little celebration? So, I just had a little initiative of, posing with Canadian flags in front of the building, hashtagging certain hashtags on social media, but then having a little community event where people can come by and just chat from 9 till 1 today.
Oh, that's so sweet. So it's open to anyone in the community. They can stop by is it the museum?
Yeah, the museum, and we can even snap some, because I've got some extra Canadian flags as well. So just to shoot some photos. I know it's a little bit cold, but we've got that available for anybody that wishes to swing by. And
Jason, tell us about the song that you've chosen this morning.
Oh boy! So just to give a little backstory, that's a really cool thing. Connecting with my dad, I live with him. Unfortunately, he has MS. But he's doing quite well. But I moved back, one of the reasons, just to help him out and have him, maintain his home and such. So one of the cool things that we do is every Saturday morning before coming to the museum, we listen to the music mashup. So it's a great bonding moment. Oh. I'm a huge music fan. Matthew Good, so he's my favorite Canadian artist. I just feel a strange connection with him. Like, he was born in 1971, the same year I was born. Yeah. And he's from Vancouver, and so I lived in the Pacific Northwest for 20 plus years of my life. And so I always feel he's got a certain vibe to his music, and he's very smart, well-read. And just the title of the song, and I believe in researching the meaning of the song, and this was around the involvement of Canada with the Iraq War. And Jean Chrétien saying, no, we're not going. And just the idea of Pledge of Allegiance. So, given the National Flag Day of Canada, wanted to go with the Canadian artist, and that's what I chose. And a little bit of the vibe, because given the hour, I didn't want anything too rocking. Well,
you have Bruce's respect, because he's always thinking about that.
Awesome.
Jason, such a pleasure having you on. What's your dad's name?
Robert.
Shout out to Robert as well, and I expect both you and Robert to call into the mashup. one Saturday.
Well, we try. We
you
try.
do?
We
Okay.
get through.
So
we try,
fingers crossed. I love that you listen, and thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy your song, and we'd love to have you back on the show. Keep us posted with what happens.
Absolutely, and really appreciate the opportunity to speak on this matter. Thank you so much.
Of course. Enjoy your song. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, but in the meantime, it's Thursday, just after 7:30. What does that mean, producer Jeff Forte?
I was born in a small town, in a small town.
Time for our small town salute, as we would like to call this segment, our weekly excuse to shed our perimeter-itis, and want to talk about Manitoba's last remaining rail turntable in the birthplace of Canadian Northern Railway is scheduled to be removed forever.
That piece of railroading history is located in Dauphin, Manitoba. To help us learn more about the efforts to save this connection to a bygone era, we are joined on Small Town Salute by Jason Gilmore, president of the Dauphin Rail Museum. Jason, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
We're doing okay. I got to tell you, when I got your media release earlier this week, I was a little sad to hear that you were dealing with. Can you just, before we get into the turntable and its history, can you just tell us a little bit more about Dauphin overall and its incredible railway history?
Yeah, it dates back to 1896. That was the arrival of the first train, and it was a byproduct of William Mackenzie and Donald Mann, who eventually formed Canadian Northern Railway. But it all started with a little rail line that started in Gladstone, went to Dauphin, and eventually went to Winnipegosis, Manitoba. And the idea was that they were looking at routes to ship grain to the UK all the way back then, and they were looking at Hudson Bay as a viable route to do so. So it's kind of apropos we're talking about that, because that's top of mind even today with the U.S. tariffs and everything else going on.
So what is a rail turntable?
So it's basically a mechanism, primarily in the steam locomotive era. So and Dauphin has a bit of history that's tied into Winnipeg there as well, if everybody's familiar with the locomotive 6043 that's in Assiniboine Park. That was the last passenger steam locomotive to ever operate in Canada, and it's on its last run. It went from the Pas through Dauphin to Winnipeg. But steam locomotives were much more labor intensive, so that device could rotate a locomotive when parked on at 360 degrees. There was what's called a roundhouse adjacent to that, which is basically a maintenance area for the steam locomotives. Dauphin still has that as well, and that was a 15-stall roundhouse. So, yeah, it was all harkened back to the steam locomotive era.
Sorry, Brent. That roundhouse still exists in Dauphin, is that right?
Correct. So both were built in 1906. The city public workshops uses that building. When the railway kind of wanted to get rid of it, Ingrowers used it for a little bit, then Manitoba Hydro used it, I think, for 5-6 years, and then in the 1960s the city took it over. So it's always cool to repurpose buildings like that.
So then, with this rail turntable, why would anybody want to get rid of something so unique?
Well, So, and we've always understood this. It is an active work site, so we've been respectful of that. And even when we do indicate to people, we have a really incredible HO scale model railroad of Dauphin in 1954 in our museum, and then we can go out the door and point to where the roundhouse is. So if we send people out there currently, like it'd be on weekends or evenings, knowing it's an active work site, but we were kind of taken aback over the last 3-4 years. And I can get into the fuller history, but over the last 3-4 years, I've been really trying to get that property underneath our lease. Heard nothing. And then in December, just randomly, we're approached by the city and said, this is our intent to fully remove this artifact, which in 1993, 17 community members did get together. At that time, they were actual railroaders or former railroaders. They raised money. They purchased that site from CN, and then the city leased it back to Fort Dauphin Museum because our museum was not incorporated at that time. So the idea was that they saved that piece of heritage to be shown for future generations. So that's always been the thought. And then when we did have an in-person meeting with the city in December, we gave them a counter proposal that we thought was quite fair, that we thought ticked both boxes, gave them a little bit more room, kept the artifacts in situ. And that's the thing with anything historic related, you really want to try and keep it in its place of origin.
It's fascinating, not only the origins of this, the fact that the roundhouse still exists. And, I think for a lot of people, they know what a roundhouse is. But the thing that I marvel at is that it's still functioning. So help me with this. So the turntable still lives inside in the roundhouse, Jason?
No, it's just outside. I don't know the actual parameters, but that was one of the issues the city was having, was they indicated that some of the machinery is getting a little bit larger. So it was, I don't want to say a nuisance, but, it's a little bit cumbersome. And so we had our counter proposal was that turntable is in what's called a pit. It's basically bordered like concrete.
Sure.
We said, okay, the track portion is currently kind of in a 12-6 position. It could be rotated into a 3-9 position, and the portion of the pit that's closer to the building, that could be filled in, and it would give them a lot more room to move vehicles and such. But, beyond that, we did go cross-country and get 7 letters of support, thinking that would show the historical value and significance, and it still didn't move the needle.
So here we are, sitting here, and is the intention as we speak is for that turntable is going to go away, or what cards do you have left to play?
As far as I know, and that's the thing, right? We don't really have much in the way of cards other than advocacy and doing interviews like this. Currently, I thought we would start an online petition through change.org, and it's been really cool. Over a week, we've had 250 signers already. It's allowed connection, which I have an interview that I did yesterday on Zoom with the granddaughter of one of those 17 community members. She lives in Alberta. She found out about this and was not happy, and because of her father's legacy. And she just voicing the opinions of the value of this artifact. So it was neat to connect that way, and I'll be posting that later today.
Well, good for you for taking these steps to try to protect this piece of history. I didn't know that about the locomotive at Assiniboine Park, what you shared with us, that it was it the final passenger steam engine used?
Locomotive in Canada, which I don't know if the listeners are aware what they did in Transcona with that locomotive they have there. They did an amazing job at restoration, and it's got beautiful cover from the elements. This gives me an opportunity. That 6043 in Assiniboine Park really needs to be taken care of, and it's not currently. So just putting that out there.
Yeah, they've done an amazing job in Transcona. Is that the Countess of Dufferin or not?
No. I can't recall off the top of my head the number of that locomotive, but that was the first one, I believe, built in the Transcona shop.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well,
Yeah.
Jason,
2747, by the way, CN 2747 for that.
There you go. Yes.
Jason, thanks for this. Keep in touch with us. Let us know what's going on, and if you get some momentum here, and it looks like maybe you can change some minds in Dauphin, maybe we can nudge it along a little bit. If people want to get involved, how do they reach out?
I would say sign that petition on our Facebook page. The link, the hyperlink is there through change.org. Yeah, if they want to contact the City of Dauphin to make their feelings known, because at that point, that's all we have right now. Is just advocacy and trying to preserve this important piece of history.
Jason Gilmore, president of the Dauphin Rail Museum. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. This is really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Jason, thank you very much for joining us. So once again, Manitoba's last remaining rail turntable, the birthplace of the Canadian Northern Railway, is scheduled to be removed forever in Dauphin. 7:46 with Mackling and Megarry. We have an extra pair of tickets for
joined by a guest. And Janice, if you would introduce yourself and indicate why you're joining me here today.
Hello and good morning. Thank you for your time. It is so appreciated and so important. My name is Janice Pocatello, and I live in central Alberta, and my family has for a while, but we originated in Dauphin, and I am the granddaughter of Michael John Pocatello. And he was one of the gentlemen who chose to preserve the turntable that is in the City of Dauphin works yard at this present moment in time. That was done in 1993, 12 years after my grandfather had retired from being a CN engineer.
And do you personally have any fond memories of those times, with him being involved in the railway in Dauphin?
Numerous. I remember being a little girl and there was a flood and we couldn't use the water, and Grandma had me on the kitchen table in a tub of water that we had gone down to go and get from the public works yard, because that was the only place that we could get usable water. And I was bathing, and I remember that Grandpa had this special horn that he used to do when he was coming into the city. At that time, I think it might have been a town. I can't remember. Yeah. But regardless, he had this special way of letting her know that he was home. It was a very romantic job, and we'd get so excited to hear that. And there were so many other times that I was invited down to the yard with him and be on the trains, and just to have that surrounding and that environment and how that was instilled in me, how important these types of transportations were and are still.
Absolutely. So getting into how you were able to connect with the Rail Museum, if you could explain a little bit of how that took place.
It's interesting to note that when you have roots, whether you've lived there or just spent many times there, they don't leave. And I have a few community friends, and one of them reached out to me and they personally sent me a message and said, "Have you heard about this?" And that was only a week ago, and I took immediate action. And I am so thankful to this person that they thought of me and that they thought to send me this message.
So one of the positive things with current day social media, correct? There's a lot of negative out there, but this is definitely that connection with people that aren't in your close vicinity. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
The fact that
our family is all about planes, trains, and automobiles, and this family friend knows this.
So definitely knew that you'd be inspired, and that's where we at the Rail Museum here really thank you, because you'd reached out. We spoke on the phone for over an hour and really thought it would be powerful just to have this connection and show the community, show people from across the country of somebody like yourself that has those direct family links to this last in Manitoba artifact that your grandfather and 17 other community members were inspired to save, so future generations could learn about the history and such.
Well, and if I could expand upon the showingness, I would like to just pan you around very slowly as to how much further our family has taken this type of appreciation and how transportation has been, again, instilled in our family. My grandfather, being an engineer from the times of even the steam trains, I'm going to just show you what my father chose to do as a hobby. My father has every single one of the steam, passenger, diesel trains from the CN times that my grandfather ran during his career.
So that's beyond.
My grandfather was very proud.
First time I'm seeing this. That's incredible.
Yes, and my grandfather was very proud. And if it weren't for him having injured himself during World War II, my grandfather is on the wall over here. And if it weren't for him having injured himself in World War II, and he was about to be deployed over to Germany to be working on the tanks, just on basically the front lines, he would have never have been with the railway and kept this country going during those times. My father was a air captain major, and when he went commercial, he was asked to fly the Pope. So we're very proud of our heritage in these things. And I know that we will be getting this train set to people who are going to preserve it and appreciate it as well. I intend, when I come to Dauphin in June, I'm bringing items to donate to the museum. Wonderful. And it is so important to me that our heritages are respected with the preservation. I am giving you something. It is my expectation that it will be curated. It will be cared for. It will be something that my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and so on will be able to come and see and have that reflection of who their roots are. That's where the respect of it comes in. How are we preserving these things?
And that's one of the reasons that we're talking today, is just to get that message out that, yes, we understand that the turntable is located in a current active work site. However, once again, in 1993, people taking their own money to preserve this site for future generations, it was that understanding that would be held in perpetuity in that location for future generations.
It's honestly insulting to think that a parking lot is more important than preserving something that is the only one left in Manitoba.
No, I agree. We at the
parking lot.
So yeah, So any other final
My
message?
grandfather donated time and money to this effort. Sorry?
Is there anything else just to finish our thoughts? I think once again,
that's exactly what I was about to say. We want to keep it short and sweet because we're to the point. And the point is that when you have community members that have put the effort in with others in a collaboration,
totally.
But as I was saying, I think I might be back now.
Yeah.
The importance of how, people have donated time and money in a collaboration. That money could have been put into a savings account. This is a savings account. This is a national savings account.
Yeah.
And that's honestly what it's all about. And again, it's just the sheer thought that this may be lost due to something that shouldn't even be considered.
So no, once again, on behalf of both the Rail Museum and myself, really appreciate you coming out, giving your voice, that direct link, and also, signing and sharing the online petition that we have through change.org. That link can be found on our Facebook at Dauphin Rail Museum. So we have no expectation with signers, but once again, we're using all the tools in our toolbox right now, like to try and preserve at least a part of this, if not all of it, but part of it in that location where it's been for 119 years now.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for your efforts in trying to do this. Thank you for having me as a guest and being a voice, even though I froze a little bit, but thank you.
No, you're very welcome. And hopefully by getting this out there into the ether, I'm hoping maybe people like yourself that have those direct links that may not even be in the area, but if they are, even better, just indicating the importance, the rail history, and that human connection. So once again, thanks, Janice, for spending a little moment today explaining why you reached out and why our initiative is so important.
The last rail turntable in Manitoba is in Dauphin. However, it is scheduled to be removed from its current location on Jackson Street in the western Manitoba city. The City of Dauphin owns the parcel of land. The city's mayor, David Bosiak, says the turntable needs to be removed for their public works crew and also for safety reasons. The Dauphin Rail Museum has been fighting to save the historic turntable and keep it in its current location. Jason Gilmore is the president of the Dauphin Rail Museum and joins me now. Good afternoon. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Tell us more about the fight to save the turntable. Why is the museum trying to save it?
Well, it really goes into our statement of purpose. It's to preserve, interpret, and present the rich railway history of Dauphin and Parkland. So when you look at that first word in our statement of purpose, it goes without saying. So given its history and really the trio that we have in Dauphin with a Manitoba Heritage Building, the station, the museum that I'm sitting in currently, and then having the turntable and roundhouse dating back to 1906, there's very few communities probably in all of Canada that has that trio. Mm-hmm. So it's very important.
I want you to describe for our listeners who have never seen or heard of the rail turntable before, kind of describe it. What does it look like?
So it harkens back to the steam locomotive era. So steam locomotives were a lot more labor intensive. So water, coal, they would get dirty. So basically from Winnipeg, this was the furthest they could go without needing more maintenance repair. So Dauphin was an important hub in that regard. So the device itself, it allows a steam locomotive to park. The device would turn the locomotive full 360 degrees. So if they needed to turn the locomotive in an opposite direction, it would allow you that. But also adjacent to that turntable is a 15-stall roundhouse dating from 1906, and that's the current City Public Works shops. Mm-hmm. And though that building back then would have 15 stalls to maintain, repair the steam locomotives.
What is the historic significance behind the turntable?
Well, getting back into the moniker that we've used, the first train arrived here in 1896. Canadian Northern Railway, which became Canada's third transcontinental railway, is basically born in Dauphin, and really hearkening back to this year being the 60th anniversary of the Canadian National Ukrainian Festival. A lot of the immigration pattern that went from Winnipeg through Dauphin to Saskatchewan, Alberta, all passed through Dauphin. So just an extremely important location historically.
What kind of talks has there been between the museum and the city to try and preserve the turntable?
So I've been president for 6 years. I would say over the last 3 or 4 years, I've made attempts both through Fort Dauphin Museum and the city to try and obtain that property and get it under the umbrella of our lease with the city. The story's a little bit convoluted because the museum here did not come to fruition until 2002. So in 1993, there were 17 community members that got together, raised money, purchased the turntable site from Canadian National Railway to preserve it for historical aspects. The city then purchased it, leased it to Fort Dauphin Museum, but once again, with the understanding to preserve this site in perpetuity. So that's, from my stance, that's what I know so far.
Okay. Now, we had a chance to chat with Mayor David Bosiak, and he told CBC that the city has given the museum a chance to have their say on what happens and options on where to move it. How do you respond to that?
So we had, I don't think that's a fair characterization. We had one in-person meeting, basically informing us the intent was for full removal. So there was no, this has been ongoing, and that's, as I said, 3-4 years ago, trying to get clarity, and it was just kicking the can down the road, frustrating. So the one-person meeting we had indicating the full removal, we did give a counter proposal, and this is the take-home. Always been very respectful of knowing that's an active work site. When we send visitors to that site, it's on weekends, evenings. We're not sending people there during working hours. So totally understanding that. But we did give a counter proposal that we thought checked both boxes of keeping that heritage piece in situ, which is what maintains its historical value, but then also giving the city more room to do their work.
The city plans to remove this turntable. So what happens now? Where does the museum go from here?
So in lieu of that initial meeting, I said, okay, let's show it's not just a local historical artifact. You know, we got letters of support from across the country, from historical associations and rail associated organizations, showing the historical value of that site and artifact. And then more recently, because then we were informed, it took 3 months to get the response from the city indicating we have convened and discussed your proposal. We're still going to fully remove the turntable. So even in the process of the discussion, out of respect, we would ask that, you know, the verbiage used was to have the site function better. You know, once again, wanting to partner and work and understanding it's a work site, you know, give us the exact reasons. Maybe we'll understand a little bit further. But we have started an online petition just to show that people care about this site, and really it gets into those people that took their money in 1993 to purchase that site for historical value. And I just recently conducted an interview with one of the direct descendants, MJ Pocatello, his granddaughter, that lives in Alberta. And when she found out about this through social media, she was not happy because the intent was to have that remain there.
Mm-hmm. Jason, I really do appreciate you joining us on the show today to explain more about this. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much.
Jason Gilmore is the president of the Dauphin Rail Museum.
Greetings from the Dauphin Rail Museum. My name is Jason Gilmore, and I'm the president of the Rail Museum. The reason I am posting this video is to clear up some of the discrepancies that occurred on an interview that I had CBC Manitoba Radio at noon on Friday, April 4th. The interview itself was comprised of a portion where I merely spoke with the host, and then the mayor of Dauphin, David Boziak, spoke on the second portion of the interview, and there were some discrepancies that I was not able to correct in real time. So what I'm about to read is a statement that I sent both to CBC Manitoba and the city, and it reads as follows. As I alluded to in my previous email, Mayor Boziak's interpretation of events that he expressed in the interview on Friday, April 4th were either misinformed or misrepresented. While I agree that providing all sides of a story is important, I was not provided the ability to refute, clarify, or correct what the mayor said in real time. This was an affront to both my personal professional integrity and the organization that I represent. Now that I have access to the audio portion of the interview, I'm going to take the time to go through and provide details and receipts. This will take time, but I wanted to focus on one of the statements made that was incorrect and needs to be corrected. So the mayor indicated, in quotes, "We invited and had the Rail Museum folks on a council agenda," end quote. I can tell you this never happened to my knowledge. Secondly, in quotes, "And on the day of the meeting, they contacted the city and said they wouldn't attend or weren't attending and never followed up with another meeting. And so we just assumed their lack of participation in that meeting meant that, we could just continue on with decisions that we had made as council, end quote. This again never happened, and now I wish to provide information on what did. The Dauphin Rail Museum was informed of the city's intent to fully remove the turntable late 2024. We had an in-person meeting with 2 city representatives on the 3rd of December, where we provided a counter-proposal that would provide much more room for the city shop needs and keep the artifact in situ. We were told that this proposal would be considered and we would receive a response after city representatives discussed it. There were email discussions with the city to schedule a presentation for council regarding the Dauphin Rail Museum as an entity. The purpose was to educate the mayor and council on our history, our 2024 statistics, and future plans. And we do have email correspondence to back that up. This presentation was the byproduct of me reaching out to the city, not the other way around as the mayor characterized, and was not related to turntable issues. The presentation was scheduled for council on January 20th, 2025. Due to unforeseen circumstances, however, the request to present to council was rescinded on the 6th of January 2025 through email to Lisa Goodell. There was a discussion to possibly reschedule this presentation at a later date. On the 16th of January, a 2-page letter was sent to mayor, council, and staff, along with letters of support from across the country, which we have in our possession, those letters of support, to educate and state why the rail turntable is important and should remain. Despite this information and in-person meeting, I had to reach out to the city mid-March to inquire if a decision had been made. During that time, there was no further outreach or discussion with us. We were basically left in the dark. An email dated the 19th of March of this year was received by the museum from City to inform us, despite our efforts, that they were still planning on the full removal of the turntable. So as you can see, the characterization that the Mayor of Dauphin gave with that one statement was false and misleading, and I would like both CBC Manitoba and the City of Dauphin to provide a correction. This ultimately is puzzling to us as a museum, that we have done nothing but follow our statement of purpose, which is to preserve, interpret, and present the rich railway history of Dauphin and Parkland area. I've been here 6 years, and we have done nothing but try and educate visitors to the area, points of interest, indicating the rich railway history that is very unique to this area, through volunteer hours, being open 6 days a week during peak summer months. The removal of the turntable also is very interesting given the timing. Early 2024, the city did publish a new city plan, and there is a clause, C16, titled Protect, Preserve, and Promote Our Built and Natural Heritage Resources. And Clause B does explicitly say, identify and protect heritage resources, including buildings, structures, landscapes, heritage sites, and other areas of historical, architectural, and/or archaeological significance, while ensuring public access. So to me, fighting for Manitoba's last rail turntable in Dauphin basically lies completely under that clause, and the city's actions to this point has not followed what they have written in their city plan. So ultimately, we want to work together with the city, and I believe this whole scenario can end on a positive note, but we cannot have city officials not speaking the truth on matters. And so that is the reason that we are posting this video. As of today, I believe the last time I looked, with the petition that we have online, we've had over 430 signers. So thank you to all that have signed that petition. We really do appreciate it. And we are doing all we can to try and preserve this very unique and valued piece of railway history. So thank you so much. Greetings from the Dauphin Rail Museum. My name is Jason Gilmore, and I just wanted to provide a brief update regarding a column that was written in the Dauphin Herald, published on the 8th of April. And what I'm going to do is read our statement regarding that article. This is in direct response to the column titled, "Saving Rail Turntable Not Feasible, Says Mayor," in the April 8th, 2025 edition of the Dauphin Herald. This story was a reply to the March 1st column written by myself titled, "What Value Can Be Placed on Preserving History?" The beginning of the article states that there are no options to achieve the rail turntable preservation. There has been a counter-proposal provided to the city in December 2024 that would double the amount of space closest to the shop's building and still keep the turntable in its current location. This was estimated to be approximately an additional 2,900 square feet. This would allow for easier equipment movement and carry on the legacy of the 17 community members that raised funds to preserve that site for future generations. The Rail Museum was not privy to conversations between the City of Dauphin and Canadian National Railway regarding the assertions made by the mayor, including safety, property lines, and liability. In the past, when I've had direct meetings with the former City Public Works head, Bill Brennan, and subsequently Mike Van Alstyne, these concerns were never expressed at any point. The museum has actively sent visitors to the location, however it has always been done with the utmost respect for the city shop area and safety, fully realizing it is an active work site. If a fence was put up around the entire public works site, could not the turntable be made available on a very limited basis for public viewing with promotion? Say several times a year with city supervision if needed. This proposal was provided, but once again shot down. The mayor's assertion that the Rail Museum Group has taken no action to preserve the turntable or of any plans for doing so going forward is incorrect. Over the past several years, we have gone out to the site with the city's permission to at least clean up the overgrowth of vegetation in the turntable pit area. Last year, the fence surrounding the area was stapled to the posts, and to gain access, you had to crawl on your belly on the ground to go under the fence. Not exactly convenient to those that wish to maintain the turntable, and in fact, I ripped a shirt doing so. There are emails dating back to 2022 where the Rail Museum has made attempts to have the transfer of the lease of the turntable from Fort Dauphin Museum to us, but with no success. Fort Dauphin Museum in April 2022 wrote to the Rail Museum in an email that their board was not interested in the turntable and will advise the City of Dauphin that we will approve the Railway Museum to obtaining the turntable and amend our lease agreement to reflect this. This unfortunately never did occur. We ask why. How could the Dauphin Rail Museum provide a plan for a site that has never been under our direct control? The mayor asserts that we'll cut a piece out of it, some parts of it. Is that how you respect a historic artifact in this community where the 129-year legacy of railway here, or the 17 community members that raised funds in 1993 to preserve this artifact? We find this language used regarding this matter not only disconcerting, but in complete opposition to the 2024 city plan that explicitly states, protect, preserve, and promote our built and natural heritage resources. Words are meaningless if not followed. Actions speak louder than words. The mayor also expressed that we don't have a plan and asserted we don't have one. How could we know that given that the meeting with the city to discuss these plans did not take place till April 11th, which was 3 days after the publication of this story? We were given 10 days to 2 weeks to provide a response after they indicated full removal of the turntable, a tactic that was to provide pressure on our part as the city budget was due this month, April. The fact that other city staff and history buffs in the community have searched for other museums and organizations willing to preserve the turntable in its entirety is, quite frankly, a little bit of a puzzling statement. We have been the only heritage organization that has shown any interest in trying to preserve and beautify this site, and yet we've never were approached prior to December 2024. The implication is that part of Dauphin's history is expendable, and the people that have attempted to care and manage the site were given no voice. We question, why is that? The Dauphin turntable belongs to the history of Dauphin, is not a commodity that can be sold to the highest bidder. The turntable was to have been turned over to the Rail Museum and was not completed when it should have, but has been attempted for the past 3 to 4 years. In the end, once again, the Dauphin Rail Museum has existed since 2002. All we have ever done is try to present this area's rich railway history and greet visitors to the area as a unique point of interest. All questions that the Dauphin Rail Museum continues to have: why are we not included as willing partners in trying to grow our tourism footprint? We ask that we all pull in the same direction. So once again, this is just a point of clarification, given the article that was published in an interview with Sean Bailey with the Dauphin Herald on April 8th, 2025. So hopefully this fills in a little bit of the gaps from our perspective provided in that statement and interview. So any questions? Feel free to contact us at the Dauphin Rail Museum on Facebook, by email. Our email is thedauphinrailmuseum@gmail.com. So have a great day. Thank you. Okay. So thank you everybody for showing up. This isn't really a formal event or anything, but you know, it is a little bit with a heavy heart we're here because this piece of rail heritage dating back to 1906, this is the final day it's going to be fully intact in this location. So just thought we'd almost like pay respects a little bit. So I want to thank Dennis Forbes because he actually had the idea to do this today. I wouldn't have thought of it, so I thought that was a cool idea, so thank you. No. So just to give a little backstory first about this, so as I mentioned, 1906, and this was back in the steam era where this turntable would rotate 360 degrees. Behind here is the 15-stall roundhouse, so steam locomotives just needed a lot more maintenance. So both of these were built in 1906. The building then, after the steam era, I believe the sequence was UGG used it for a little bit, and then Manitoba Hydro for a couple years, then finally in the 60s the city purchased it, and it's their public works building. So in 1993 there were 17 community members, one of whom is here, so John Tomlinson is here. They bought this site from CN to preserve it for historical purposes. So that was really cool that they did that. We've tried to carry the torch here, and in December, unfortunately, the city informed us that they wanted to remove it because of convenience factors with the machinery here. So just to let you know that out of respect for that group that preserved this site, and just our mantra at the museum is to preserve, interpret, and present the rich railway history of Dauphin. We spent 5 months, all included in this book, if you ever want to see the efforts that we made. So we had 8 letters of support from across the country from rail and historical associations. We did an online petition where over 555 people signed.
I did a press release where it was news, print, radio, TV, numerous meetings with the city, and yet didn't move the needle at all. And so as of tomorrow at 9 a.m., it's going to be removed. Now, just to let you know what's going to happen in the future, so we have come upon an agreement that we will have a 15-foot portion of this bridge, the full width, and we're going to create an off-site memorial closer to the museum. So the next step is fundraising for that. So we have an agreement with the city that they are going to accept donations through cash, check, debit card, and tax receipts will be issued. So we'll have a little bit more information in the media as that goes forward, but that's the plan. So yeah, just in any event, this was Manitoba's oldest and last turntable from Canadian Northern Railway, CN Railway. So that's why we fought so hard, because it is a very, very unique piece of history. And it's not only, you know, it's always funny because we had some comments, oh, it's just an old piece of metal. It's like, I don't look at it as an object. I always think of the people that were involved. So you think of thousands of employees that dealt with this piece of machinery, hundreds of thousands of people, like either passengers, people involved in agriculture, commerce. None of that would happen without this artifact, this equipment. So that's the thing that I always think of, why it's important to preserve things like this for future generations, so you can explain how things worked in years prior. So with that, tomorrow, as I said, 9 a.m., they're going to start dismantling this. I will be here to let them know the portion that we want. There is a plaque, relatively small and hard to see, but it is on the other side, with the names of those community members that did contribute. So what we're going to do is put that on the new off-site memorial, but then also create a larger version so you can actually see the people's names that were on there from the 90s. So with that, that's kind of it. So it's just a last hurrah. It's a little bit bittersweet, but I look at it as this is a final kind of page in this chapter, and we're going to build a new chapter where more people can see this in the future, because we have been respectful through the years, knowing that this is an active work site. So it's more weekends, evenings, we'll send people out here to view it. But yeah, during weekday business hours, we've been reluctant to send people out here. So, but yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit of history, because when we did the online petition, there were folks, local folks, didn't even know this existed, partially because we don't promote it highly. So thank you for attending. You're all seeing the last bit of Manitoba history here in full in its original site. The pieces that they're dismantling, or the piece that we want? No idea. Yeah, that would be a question for the city. But yeah, the parameters, it's 84 feet in length and in total 90 tons. So it's a large undertaking for sure.
Are you going to have that part that drives the thing?
Yes. So that we want this end, right? So, and actually a little bit of the track that it rode on. Yeah. So yeah, this is the end that we want, but it'll be the full width, which is nice. And we've come up with renditions where maybe getting it sunk into the ground, have stairs either end. You can walk across it then, have some interpretive plaques. And we've got lots of pictures, which I was going to bring, but it was raining and I didn't now, showing the locomotives on the turntable.
So this is where it always was.
Yeah.
It just hung around.
Yeah. So 1906. Yeah. So there were 15, and if you ever go on our Facebook or whatever, there's 15 huge doors. Yeah. So it's 15 stall. But from what I've read, this is kind of the furthest west you could get from Winnipeg before the steam locomotives needed maintenance. And as I said, given the date of 1906, you think of all the significant events. You think of the first immigration wave of Ukrainian immigrants, like when we had the Ukrainian festival last week. I've told so many people that if you have relatives of Ukrainian heritage, more than likely, They came through Dauphin. Locomotives could have been put on this turntable at that point to go west. You think of both world wars, those troop trains, the locomotives could have used this turntable. It's pretty amazing when you think of some of the world events that Dauphin was involved with rail.
Is there any video from the past of this?
There is, yeah.
Working?
Yep. We have color footage of 6060, which I can't remember. Is that a... but it's one of the larger steam locomotives in the CNR roster. So yeah, we've got video on there. It's pretty cool, and it says Dauphin.
Yeah, that locomotive takes
YouTube
up
even. Yeah.
How much?
Just Dauphin Rail Museum. Yeah.
How much of this are you taking down to the
15 feet, 15 to 20 feet. Just enough of a portion that you get a sense of the size and scope, right?
When's that happening, Jason?
Well, so the city has agreed that they're gonna, and that's why I'm here tomorrow to instruct them what we want. They're gonna put it off site somewhere, and then it's the fundraising and getting all our ducks in a row. Because we're coming up with renditions of what we want it to look like. So.
How long was the 6040 engine, the locomotive? How long? Could you put that on there?
Yeah, like the 6060 was the same class, but
the last locomotive that went through here is sitting in
Assiniboine Park.
Rusting away
I know. I'm always online as a keyboard warrior. Well, that or we have 200 feet of track by our caboose. Like, that's always a pipe dream, but this first.
Well, if they're going to lift this, they can move this. They can move a little.
Yeah. And actually, we did contemplate moving this entire turntable, but it would have taken, well, Minty's moving, if anybody's heard of them, like they were willing to do it, but it's so large. Like,
what do you think that weighs?
90 tons, sorry. So it's 84 feet in length, 90 tons in weight. Because you think of the weight of the locomotives and tenders would be like 300 tons, so it has to be hardy enough to move that, right?
That's heavy duty.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm assuming they're just going to be chopping up parts because.
Oh, they cut it up into pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you all. You're all sort of a part of history. not all that positive, but trying to put a positive spin that the memorial will be nice close to the museum.
That was his first job.
Oh yeah, it is many people in this area for decades and decades. Primary employer, right? Dauphin was a huge rail hub, so yeah. Thank you for attending. That's all from my part. So I'm gonna try, and I was here taking pictures. I'm recording this. I'm gonna try and create a video just of the whole removal, and then eventually when we create the offsite memorial.
Sounds good. If you have to go inside the building, you can still see where they took the tracks out and redid the floor.
Well, the thing is, several years ago we got access, and the thing I love, there was still staining on the ceiling from the steam locomotives, and it's been like 60 plus years, right, since they ran. So
there were 15 doors on this.
Correct.
The building was well built. how was it getting its air while it was turning? And then,
Open here.
Mr. Long, first explain that the air lines come underground to the center.
Yeah. They come underground from the compressor, was over there housed in a building. Come over here to the center and then back to here. They're hooked up here, then we pump this on. The air is full pressure to here. Then you turn this to let her go.
How do you change direction then, or is it just one direction?
Just one direction.
Oh, okay.
When you turned all the way around. Then you brought it back to this pivot here. Put that block in. That's what blocked it
Oh,
up.
that's what locked it in place?
Locked it in place,
Okay.
then you run the engine off.
And run the engine off, eh? Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool.